One of the other things I'm curious about is, today, I read a lot about, I read a lot from Dan Weston, people like Jared Kimber, and the way they write about T20 cricket today is vastly different from that period, right? They talk about boundary percentages and dot balls and not having that right balance.
Yeah.
Um, was that also how you discussed the sport in 2012, or was it nowhere near this, this sort of evolution?
Yeah, I think there was always a lot of preparation and homework done in terms of who you're playing against, the ground sizes you're playing on, the pitches, average scores, winning scores. I think there was always that. And to be honest, you've got to be careful you don't go too overboard on that. It's a real balance to be had. And you get a lot of data now. There's data on everything. And I think the job of a coach is to really go through it and pick out the key bits. So when you're having your team meetings or you're chatting with your players one-on-one or however you do it, I think giving the important information, because some players don't want lots of information. It actually clouds them. It takes them away from what they do. So you've got to be really careful. You've got to know your player. Some players will want it. Some players don't want to know it, and they actually find it off-putting. So you've got to be a little bit careful about how you give the information. There's certain data, of course, that everyone needs to know. Your boundary ranges. I felt watching the West Indies in this recent World Cup, they were playing on big boundaries in Australia, 80-yard boundaries, and I felt they were still trying to clear boundaries that even if you hit the ball well, you still weren't going to clear them. I don't think they were prepared to do the knock it for two, run a bit more, adapt your game based on where you're playing. That's what I felt. Now, in the World Cup we won in Sri Lanka, those grounds were still pretty small. So the hitting aspect was fine on a 65-yard boundary. But if you're playing 80 yards in Melbourne or some of these places in Australia, you've got to knock ones and twos. Otherwise, you're going to be, well short of your target, trying to keep it in sixes all the time. So I think there was a lack of adaptability in this most recent team. I'm sure they would have talked about it in meetings, but probably been disappointed that they didn't adapt a bit more to where they were playing or what they were playing against.